Hey, good morning, WellHouse Church. Pastor Cullen here. Excited to have something different for you. I'm actually going to do something today that I've never done before. I'm not actually going to open the Bible for this story. We're about to do an Advent series. And Advent is not super popular amongst a lot of churches. And I'm doing something different with the Advent series. And so there's an extra week here in our series, or in our calendar, since we finished Acts a week early. And so I'm going to tell you a story about the history of Advent and what Advent is, and why I think it's important to do Christmas a little different this year. So Advent actually begins as the celebration that goes along with, or in conjunction with Easter. So Easter, Christianity arises out of Judaism, and so the early Christians end up adopting Passover, the Jewish festival of Passover, as their Easter thing. And so Advent is a piece of that. They actually go together, because what Advent is Advent is a time to, it means coming. The word means the coming. It comes from the Latin word adventus, which is just the Latin translation of the Greek word parousia, which means coming. And so Advent actually originated as a looking ahead towards the coming of Christ. The second coming of Christ. And so it doesn't actually, it's hard to know its origin story because we just don't have great documentation, but it's first listed in the late 300s. And at that point, when it really gets fixed to Christmas is when Christmas gets set, the date of Christmas gets set. Up until then, Advent is kind of a moving target. And people are celebrating it near Easter, some are celebrating it later. Christmas gets tied to December because Jesus is the light of the world, and it's the darkest time of the year. That's literally the only reason that it got stuck like that. And so you have all these things at play, and in 380, there's a council that it meets together to decide on a certain type of belief called Priscillianism, and they deem it a heresy. And in that, in their opinion piece, if you want to look at it as a legal writing, and recommendations of what a church could do moving forward, they recommend the practice of Advent, and they recommend it around Christmas, specifically in between December 17th and the 29th. That is when they recommend that you do Advent. And it's 4 weeks when it originally begins, and the first 2 weeks are about hope. They're about the looking forward to the Advent yet to come. The coming, the return of Jesus. And then the second 2 weeks of Advent are focused on the first coming, the Christmas story, the baby in the manger, the nativity scene elements of Advent, which is what has prevailed. My guess is because of the commercialization of Christmas. When Christmas gets, to be commercialized, and it becomes this whole industry, and it also becomes a secular thing, we lose some of that. So what that does, that corporate element, that commercialized element of Christmas, it makes us all speed up. It makes us go, go, go. The holidays are some of the busiest times of the year. We're traveling, doing this. We're going to see these people. We're leaving them to go see these other people. We're stressed out because we're talking to this group of people that doesn't have their stuff together, but this one is trying to decide and they have their stuff together. We're trying to coordinate all these things. No. That's exhausting. Especially when you have, blended families, divorced families. I grew up a kid of divorce. I'm divorced now with children. This is a busy time of year. And unfortunately, that's just partly because our lives are so busy. And so what I want to do is I'm going to do an Advent series titled A Slow Kind of Christmas. And we're going to spend some weeks looking at times in Jesus' life. Remember, Advent is this concept of looking ahead to the return of Jesus and the Jesus that's already come. We're going to look at some of these stories where Jesus chose to stop, to slow down, to be silent, to exist in solitude. A slow kind of Christmas. A different kind of Christmas. One where we actually try to contemplate what it means to celebrate this figure that we have named ourselves after. We are celebrating Christmas as Christians because of Christ Jesus. I want us to take some time this year to really try to decide what that means. And I think we best do that when we slow down. At least that's what we saw Jesus do. So my question to you is, what should Christmas look like this year?